My name is Allan Galeana.
And I'm Frank Mayers.
Welcome to the Wrap It Up Podcast, episode 2. And I just want to start off by saying, wow, this card was kind of crazy. I mean, a couple of nobodies, some kind of title implication, but overall, it was a knockout fest, and all of these knockouts are very interesting and captivating, for sure. You want to take it off with your...
I think go figure, right? The first international card that we've had in a long time. Very difficult watch time for the US and Europe, and it's the most entertaining card we've had in a long time.
I just want to start off by saying, for the prelims, my favorite fight for sure was, I have to be pretty short with this, but Ming versus Feng Xiaocan, that was a crazy fight. I mean, that third round head kick was kind of out of nowhere. I mean, it looked like she was setting up either a hook or a takedown, but then just out of nowhere throws this head kick that completely stiffens Feng and just brutally finishes her with like a couple extra strikes. She actually had to go taken out on the stretcher, which was very scary, and it's very funny, the fact that she's like a doctor currently who was fighting kind of in secret from her parents, and the fact that she has now a contract, I'm pretty excited for her.
Yeah, the whole story is crazy. Mm-hmm. And seeing, someone basically fighting a weight class up, gonna be almost down 3 rounds, and then manages to set up this absolutely picture perfect head kick. The setup was fantastic because you could see with the takedowns, drawing her opponent's attention down, making the opening, and then, knockout of the year contender. Absolute knockout of the year contender. It's I've been watching this sport for a long time. That is one of by far the scariest knockouts I've seen in quite a while. So, yeah. Absolutely hats off. Incredible prelim.
All right.
So let's move on to the main event here.
That main event.
Yeah, Deiveson Figueredo versus Petr Yan in a bantamweight showdown with some pretty major title implications.
Mm-hmm. I want to start out by saying, wow. I said that it was going to be fireworks. Fireworks meaning like to the non-MMA fan, basically meaning that it was going to be a very punch-heavy, kick-heavy, just like a very visually impressive fight. And it was. I don't want to rant. I want to kind of get your opinion first, but what did you think?
I think we saw what Petr Yan is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
There's been 2 Petr Yans, basically. There's the version of him we get when he has a good game plan coming in. Mm-hmm. They've trained for the opponent, and he is able to take instructions from his corner and make adjustments on the fly. And then there is the Petr Yan we saw versus Merab last time, versus Aljamain Sterling, where he kind of just keeps trying the same thing and is not having success, is not making reads, is not making adjustments. This was definitely the first. This was Petr Yan at his best and in a very favorable stylistic matchup. I was impressed to see how well Yan was able to control the distance.
Mm-hmm.
He started the leg kicks early, as well as using something we don't see very often, which is a side kick to the knee. And just with that, he was able to basically keep Figueiredo at bay on the feet and control when can Figueiredo close the distance. Mm-hmm. And that completely put it in the striking in Jan's favor. He looked very fast on the ground. Mm-hmm. He showed excellent defense. Like when Figueiredo had his back, he was using a 2-on-1 grip to control Figueiredo's arm, broke the body triangle, and managed to escape. That was in round 1. And then as the fight went on, there were things that the corner was seeing, like calling for an uppercut. And what was important for me was seeing Petr be able to get that instructions from the corner and actually apply it. And in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, he read Figueiredo's level changes perfectly and was just stinging him with the uppercut the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so it really, as well as also he controlled the footwork brilliantly. And I wouldn't say that Figueiredo looked bad, but this was definitely the Petr Yan story. Figueiredo looked strong. He clearly had power. He was able to get takedowns. But he was very much pot-shotting, kind of loopy and easy to read on the feet, and then was just getting caught every single time he tried to enter into the clinch. There wasn't a lot of explosion trying to come into the clinch. He would just kind of reach his arms out forward and move toward Petr, and shocker, you get hit in the face when that happens.
I mean, Jan, when he was like in a flow like state. Like, I mean, like some of these combos that he was hitting, the way that he was keeping Figueiredo up on the feet, and the utilization of the two hands on the one arm of Figueiredo to keep him from like submitting was really strong by him. But I mean, Figueiredo was looking pretty dangerous the entire time. I mean, he was basically being suppressed on most strikes, but I mean, like, he dropped Jan a couple times and they looked pretty like significant. The only issue is he's gun shy. Like, he was getting, to be fair though, like, he was getting stung and he was getting stopped, so that definitely prevented him, in the leg kicks by Jan were stopping him. But I mean, like, when Petr Yan is throwing like 4 punches and you can't respond with one because you're absorbing them, I mean, it is very frustrating as a Figueiredo fan, and I feel like he's in one of the worst positions that he can be at the division. Like, he's ranked, but now because he lost to Jan, he's not going to be able to get a title shot. And the guys that make sense for him to fight, like a Sandhagen or like maybe an O'Malley, but even then that doesn't make sense in terms of like his positioning. Like, he's in a really rough spot. Like, the guys that he has, and plus, not to mention the fact that he's already fought like Cheeto, he's already fought Aldo, correct?
I don't believe Figueiredo has fought Aldo, although I would have to check. It's a possible fight,
but it's not good for him.
Yeah, like you said, Figueiredo. I mean, where Petr Yan goes from this is very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
He called out Mirab. Mirab is all but pretty much verbally accepted it. Mm-hmm. Granted, nothing is signed. There's no contracts or anything at the moment.
Yeah.
But they both seem really interested in having the rematch. It seems like that's where it's going to go. But yeah, Deiveson is ranked. He's number 4. Mm-hmm. But he has this problem where he's beaten guys like Rob Font. He's beaten some of the gatekeepers for the division. He's shown that he's, even moving up a weight class is viable. Mm-hmm. But the guy, I don't think he's going to get a fight up. I just don't see anyone accepting it unless Umar is just really desperate to get a fight, and I think Umar dominates him. Yeah,
he's just like in a tough position, while Jan, like, realistically, like, he can fight for the belt if either Merab lets him or after the Umar fight. And I mean, if he fights Umar, that's going to be rough. If he fights Merab, that's going to be rough. But I mean, he looks pretty solid. I mean, like, he's definitely going to be training, because I mean, he got hurt, but he's a very train-heavy fighter, and he could also just straight up fight O'Malley, Jan. And I think giving Jan a 5-round fight with O'Malley is a plus.
I think there would be a lot of fan interest as well in seeing the O'Malley versus Petr Yan rematch, because that is likely to go down as the worst robbery of the year. That was one of the most controversial decisions I've ever seen. The majority of media scores had it for Petr Yan. Personally, I scored it for Petr Yan.
Yeah, I think it was brutal. I think giving him the extra 2 rounds, it didn't make sense for me to like take that 5 rounds away from him since he was still in the top 5.
Yeah,
it was just brutal.
That being said, I don't see O'Malley taking that fight.
No,
he's going to want to protect his ranking.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the Mirab fight is very likely what's going to happen. I think Figueiredo in a co-main event is interesting, because one of the dynamics that we did see at play in this fight was in a 5-rounder, Figueiredo cannot be as aggressive with his offense. He risks gassing. He's always had a bit of a questionable gas tank.
Mm-hmm.
If he's fighting a guy like, say, a Henry Cejudo or a Jose Aldo, who are really like the 2 only fights below him that kind of make any sense or he hasn't beaten, they would make a solid co-main, but the number of rounds is going to be a huge factor in how that fight plays out.
Yeah, speaking of his questionable gas tank, I think some of it was shown in that fight. Like, I mean, obviously getting pieced up pretty bad, but also just like his mouthpiece flying out more than once kind of shows that like he couldn't bite down on it to keep it in his mouth or something along the lines of that, because he just kept getting beat down. And like the fact that every time his mouthpiece flew out, the ref would stop it to give him like a couple seconds, you can kind of see that, in my opinion, don't want to throw shade, but I think he was definitely intentionally doing it to try and at least get a second or two of breathing again.
Yeah, whether it was intentional or not, it is something that fighters have done in the past, and regardless, when your mouthpiece is getting knocked out, like you said, it's because you're not biting down on it, because you have to be breathing through your mouth. Now, I think it is worth counterpointing that despite being in the 5th round and Figueiredo's gas tank, starting to look difficult, if there was a round in that fight that you could score for him, it would have been the 5th round. He dropped Petr Yan. That was where he looked by far the most dangerous.
I think that's the main, like, Figueredo, not necessarily the exact same situation, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Chito Vera, like these guys with some of the strongest chins. Like, I mean, the fact that Petr Yan didn't drop Figueredo more than, like, I don't think he even dropped him, to be honest.
He definitely hurt him with some shots, but he never dropped him clean like Figueiredo dropped Petr.
Yeah, the fact that he, like, has these insane, like, Figueredo dropped Chito Vera. Like, he has some of the craziest power, but again...
And that's just up a weight class, too.
And it's like, he's pretty gun-shy, and it really harms him because he has a questionable gas tank.
Yeah, and again, that's something we've seen play out in other fights where in 3-rounders you tend to see a much more aggressive Figueiredo, or in some of his 5-round fights that he has won, he's been much more aggressive and has gotten the finish early, usually within the first 2 rounds, where the gas tank just hasn't been a factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's this fight definitely puts Figueiredo in a very tough position.
Yeah. It's tough because this is a fight where I don't think either fighter looked objectively bad.
No, they definitely looked good.
But it was also, a lot of this fight was borderline one-way traffic.
Yeah.
From Petr Yan, who, again, to speak well of the game planning, Petr Yan wasn't just sitting there absorbing shots on his high guard and, getting wobbled all over the place. And I don't mean wobbled like rocked, but like physically pushed by the punches, which is something that's Yan has been known for.
Yeah, and it doesn't help him in the scorecards either.
Yeah, they knew coming in, clearly, that Figueiredo was going to have to be gun-shy because of his gas tank, and that they could outvolume him and counter him. And that game plan worked to a T. So I'm hopeful that going forward we'll get to see more of this very, well thought out, well game planned Petr Yan. But again, that hasn't always been the case. I think if he can show the footwork he did, I think if he can show the counter wrestling that he did in this fight, when we look at a potential matchup with Merab, I would still favor Merab, honestly, but I think Petr could clearly do better than he did in the previous fight.
Yeah, I think he needs to definitely work on his wrestling defense. But I mean, to be honest, like he's won his last 2, and this is a really good position for him. Like, he's only going to go up in terms of like who he's going to fight. He's either going to fight a higher contender or the champ, depending on how the UFC decides. But it's looking really good for Yan. It's looking a little questionable for Figueiredo.
Yeah.
And with that kind of concludes this fight night. I just want to say that all the equipment and the actual podcast setup was provided by Laveau's Productions. And besides that,
thank you for listening. This has been wrapped up. De Anza College's Combat Sports Podcast. Thank you.
Have a good one, guys.